Greetings and welcome. I'm glad to have you here. Before we begin, let me take a few moments to give the obligatory like this video, comment on this video, subscribe if you haven't already, and more importantly, share this video. Let's try and get this channel to 1,000 subscribers. And while you're at it, be sure to check out my Patreon channel. Consider becoming a subscriber and help keep my editor Graygor energized with pizza and beer. Seriously, editors help make the magic in this business, so please, let's give them some love. The links are in the video description at the top of the page on both YouTube and Rumble. And lastly, a quick shout out to my Tier 3 and 4 patrons. Russ of the Frozen North, New5AC, Nick, Zachary Langmead, ScaredWolf1206, and Zachery Raney. Thank you very much. And now, on with the story. The Deathworlders, a story by Philip R. Johnson, a.k.a. Hambone, Hambone HFY, and Hambone 3110. Chapter 26, Blood and Ash. Part 2. Date point, 10 years, 4 months, 1 week, 4 days AV. Gold mine west of Marsa Alam, Egypt, Earth. Roy Vinther. Damn it, the way they stare is really starting to get to me. Coombs was patrolling the perimeter around the vehicles. He wasn't obviously armed. None of them were obviously armed, but he was armed, and he, Pavlo, and Murray had taken to orbiting the open space near the foreman's office where the cars were parked, keeping an eye out for trouble. Vinther and Firth were lurking at the cars to protect them, and Walsh was busy being the intel weenie, keeping them fed with information and connected to the chain of command. "Be cool, Bouncer," Vinther muttered. "Fuck that. I'm salty like a fucking margarita glass," Coombs replied. "For crying out loud, they biodrone the whole goddamn village, barkeep." "And they'll pay for it," Vinther promised. "We'll see to that. But right now, we got a different job, you hear me?" "I hear you," Coombs grumbled. Vinther saw him pause and study a nearby villager, which watched him with a completely dispassionate expression. Vinther saw him shudder and move on. "Worst part is," Walsh commented, "I reckon you're wrong there, barkeep." "How so?" Vinther asked him. "That motherfucker in there? I think the term we're using is digital sapient," Walsh said. "He ain't an artificial intelligence. He's a sapient being whose whole existence is his data. If we bust in there right now and smoke his ass, he'll be walking around as someone else, somewhere else, pretty much right away. And if we do somehow take him out, they restore him from backup. I don't see a way to make him pay, and even if we could, you can only execute somebody the one time. Ain't no way Six is ever going to see a punishment fit for his crime." "We could make it hurt," Firth grumbled. He nodded towards the heavy equipment shed, and Vinther turned just in time to spot a tiny, grimy face duck out of sight. "There's kids here, DB." "They've not been droned," Walsh observed. "Guess they're too young." "They ain't being looked after, neither." "We'll sort that out," Vinther promised. "This won't fucking stand." "That's kind of the problem, boss," Walsh told him. "It will, and there ain't a damn thing we can do about it." Date point, 10 years, 4 months, 1 week, 4 days AV. Gold mine west of Marsa Alam, Egypt, Earth. 6. "What do you mean we've already won? When? How?" Six stood up and glanced through the half-closed blind at the men who had escorted Ash to him. 6.5 years ago, he said, "when you and I first met, though, of course, I was wearing a different body then. White, bearded, surgically altered to be as statistically average in height and appearance as we could manage." "Mr. Johnson," Ash frowned, "you were going to shoot up the roller derby." "Well, I had no weapon. No, the shooting was to be done by another. I was purely there to observe, to see what would happen. To, poke the hornet's nest, as I said at the time, and, oh yes, I was stung," Six said. "Even after the extensive and detailed review of my memories of the event, I had no conclusive evidence to help me determine how I was detected. I had suspicions, of course, more sophisticated facial recognition algorithms than I had bargained for, law enforcement being closer behind me than I had anticipated, even a young couple taking a picture which could apparently by happenstance include me and uploading it to the internet. It wasn't until I reviewed the memories of the agent responsible for a failed operation on Cimbrian that I detected a correlation. It wasn't until you and I crossed paths at Cairo Airport that I deduced some kind of causal relationship, he finished. And now, I think I've spoken enough. I want to know the nature of that relationship. Who are you? How did you know who I was? How did you survive the city's destruction? Why were you on Cimbrian, and why are you here now? Ash gave him a long, cold stare. And if I tell you? Then I will explain in full what my plan is, my reasoning, and what your species can do to help me help you. Do I have to tell you my real name? You don't. If you want to be Ash, then Ash you shall be. Really, that's an unimportant detail. Believe me, after this conversation is over, I will already have everything I can usefully extract from you, no matter what you say. She frowned at that, clearly trying to figure out his meaning, then took a deep breath and composed her story. I was born in San Diego, she said. My parents were, they were well off. Papa was an attorney. Mama was a gynecologist. They had a lot of money. They sent me to public school anyways. They said it was better for me to learn how everyone had it, not just the people with money. That's where I met, my boyfriend. We were on our first date at that roller derby. How did you recognize me? Six asked. Ash thought hard. I don't know how much I can or should tell you, she replied. Ah, so there's a secret involved. A secret to do with this boyfriend of yours, perhaps. There's a secret, Ash agreed, giving away exactly nothing. One that I think I'm not going to share. A pity, Six said. May I ask why? Loyalty, Ash replied. She really was delightfully impenetrable. The possible consequences, personal and for all mankind, take your pick. Very well. What will you tell me? I'll tell you how I survived the blast, she offered. Yes. Surviving a 5-kiloton antimatter strike, impressive, Six enthused. Were you forewarned? Evacuated? No. How then? I was on vacation. Six couldn't stop his body's automatic reflex to frown. Vacation? Florida. Orlando. My boyfriend's father invited me along. She smiled for him. It was luck. If the blast had happened a week earlier or a week later... Luck? Pure luck, Ash nodded. Out of all the people in that city, Six growled, you expect me to believe that the same people who identified me and facilitated my capture purely by chance were also among the tiny handful who survived? Do you have any idea what the odds against that are? Ash just shrugged, still revealing nothing whatsoever. How much? 1 in several hundred billion, Six told her. And yet you seem frustratingly sincere, which means that you are either the very best liar I've encountered in all my life, or else that you are unaware of some causal link between those events. And what might that link be? Ash asked. That is what I hoped to glean from you, Six snapped. The starport, Folktha, was that coincidence also? Do not tell me that it was. The universe does not work that way. If you keep shouting, the armed men outside are going to come in here and rescue me, Ash pointed out. Six inhaled fiercely and willed himself to calm down. It's this secret, isn't it? The one you won't discuss. The one you won't trust me with. Why should I? Ash shot back. You just told me that you were here on Earth to try and kill us all. Name your price, Six told her, tiring of dancing around the subject. Okay, Ash put a thoughtful hand to her mouth. What I don't get is how you're acting like this is an itch you've just got to scratch, but on the other hand, it's like you want to tell me everything. Which is it? Both, Six answered truthfully. Yeah? What's so important? She asked. What's in it for you to help us? Is that your price? My price is that if we're going to share our secrets, you have to earn it. You first. Six scowled at her. You drive a hard bargain. I have no reason to trust you. Sucks to be told that, doesn't it? But it's true, she replied. That's my price. You tell me what we need to know. You tell me why you're doing this, and then I'll tell you what I think the link you're after is. A very hard bargain. She folded her arms. This time it wasn't a defensive gesture, but a defiant and confident one. Deal or no deal? Six tried to match her for a ferocious glare, but failed. Humans were just naturally better at that. Very well, he said, conceding defeat. You have a deal. Date point, 10 years, 4 months, 1 week, 4 days AV. C-17 Globemaster, somewhere over the North Atlantic. Earth. Major Owen Powell. The funny thing about EV Mass was that it was hell to put on and take off, but once you were in it, the vice-like pressure that had been the bane of the SOR's life as they acclimated and conditioned to it now felt like a familiar, full-body hug that added a kind of solidity to every movement. The thing was awkward and heavy as sin right up until the moment it was properly seated, sealed, and supported, at which point the wearer was made to feel strong. Powell rolled his shoulders and shimmied to make certain that it was definitely seated before the midsuit's internal layer had time to expand in response to his body heat and clamp down fully. That didn't take as long, he observed. Airman Thorpe, one of his suit techs, grinned. We gave you an extra millimeter of clearance in the shoulder, sir. Is that all? I'll never speak ill of a single millimeter again. Powell shook his shoulders. Getting his head and arms up and through the torso section had definitely been easier. That was what the suit techs were for, of course. Their whole job revolved around keeping the EV mass in perfect working order and constantly fine-tuning and adjusting it to the needs of its operator. No need for a SEAL or life support check today either, his other tech, Corporal Brown, added. Oh, aye. Don't need to worry about suit breaches today. Just about plunging towards Africa at a couple 100 miles an hour with no parachute, Powell nodded. All three of them chuckled. All right. Let's get the bloody water in. Powell turned and presented the water ports on his lower back. Thorpe promptly connected the input line. I know I ask this every time, Powell commented, as the pump whined into life and he felt his undersuit stiffen and tighten in response to the tepid liquid that filled it out. But is it really bloody necessary to use cold water? And like I tell you about every time, Brown smiled, yes it is. As Brown monitored the water pressure, Thorpe set about fitting the outer suit. This was the part that was different for every SOR man, from the industrial load-carrying gear and supplemental armor plating that was a protector's burden, a defender's accessible toolkit, or just the lightweight bare bones that aggressors needed to keep them ready to kill at an instant's notice. That was the outer suit. Powell's outer suit was dominated by a sensor and communications package which turned him into a walking intelligence gathering system to give any modern UAV a run for its money and then some. Supplemental super batteries compensated for the expanded sensor package's power demands, and the communications equipment turned his EV mass into the nexus of a web of data. The system wasn't going to be quite as effective today as it had the potential to be under normal operation. The suit benefited from real-time analytics offered by the computer banks aboard HMS Caledonia, without which the flow of information was less intelligently controlled and interpreted, but it wasn't like he'd be blind. Far from it. Walsh's pet UAV was a constant trickle of data, as were recon satellites, local collection, Link 16 sensor integration from the substantial airborne assets in play to support the mission. It all formed a sphere of tangible data, into which Powell's suit and Powell himself neatly fit, reaping its benefits and feeding new data back in. For now, things were quiescent. No status alerts, no zone conflicts. Everything they had managed to persuade the Egyptians to allow was on standby and ready to pounce if needed. Everything, it seemed, was going well. Maybe it was just the cold water making him irritable and antsy, but Powell was a firm believer that things never went well. It was only a matter of time. Date point. 10 years, 4 months, 1 week, 4 days AV. Gold mine west of Marsa Alam, Egypt. Earth. 6. So, the question as asked is 2 questions. Why am I helping you, and what do you need to know? It was now definitely going dark outside. The sky was purple from end to end, and Ash's guards and escorts were barely visible as they waited and patrolled. Six turned away from the window and leaned against the desk to talk to her. The answer to the first part is that I am not helping you. I'm helping my own people. It so happens that the best approach for helping them is to help your people. How so? How familiar are you with entropy? The apparent non sequitur made her pause, but Ash took it in stride. Thermodynamics, the inevitable progress of a closed system towards its lowest energy state. Good. You have an education. What about virtual particles? Look, I only did high school science. What's your point? A virtual particle is literally that. A particle that has only a virtual existence as a solution to and a consequence of the equations describing quantum mechanics. They are modeled as pairs of particles popping into existence simultaneously, meeting, annihilating, and vanishing with no net change to the energy state of the universe. Ash folded her arms, waiting with commendable patience, but her expression was a clear warning that he should explain himself sooner rather than later. Six smiled. Virtual particles do two things. They permit black holes to evaporate through irradiation, and they provide a neat answer to a question every sapient species has ever asked: the origin of the universe. You see, if a virtual, unreal, simulated particle can still produce real tangible effects and yet accurately be said never to have truly existed at all, then so can the universe. If the energy state of the universe will eventually decay to zero, if it is flat, to use the human cosmological parlance, then it will have, in a big picture sense, never have existed at all. He spread his hands. And any universe you happen to encounter in your travels is nothing more than a temporary local anomaly. That sounds completely crazy, Ash objected. Yes, the problem with living in the universe is that it is a terrible preparation for thinking about the universe, Six agreed. But there you have it. Why does the universe exist? The answer? It doesn't. Ash stared at him, then, quite deliberately, reached out and knocked on the desk. It made a solid wooden sound. Yes, you're not listening, Six told her. The point is that all of this is virtual, an emergent product of an equation that is still being worked through. Eventually, all of it will be gone, and so will we, and nothing will remain. Space-time and all its energy and matter will be gone, as if they never were, because, well, they weren't. We live, he expanded, getting into his stride, in a mockery of a reality, one that's infinitely less real than the worlds we build inside our minds, one with no meaning, no purpose, no fate, and no hope except whatever we can create for ourselves. All of us are trapped in a cruel game that allows only defeat. The only endgame is to live a little longer, and the only winning move is to keep playing. And your point is, Ash insisted, that any threat which would lock you out of the game must be neutralized, that any advantage that will keep you in the game must be seized. And for the first time in the hierarchy's history, the first strategy has not worked. I was captured. I was interrogated. I was beaten. Me. He stalked across the office and composed himself. And your people opened my eyes. In deep time, whatever is possible is inevitable. Whatever happens once can happen a second time. He turned back. Our whole strategy, this entire time, has been fundamentally wrong. All it takes is one Deathworld species to slip through our net, and we have failed. Our destruction at that point is inevitable. Why? Ash asked. Why is it inevitable that you would be destroyed? Ask the dodo, or the West African black rhinoceros, the California golden bear, the great panda, the thylacine, the Pyrenean, the ibex, the Baiji dolphin, and those are all Deathworld species, and a tiny fraction of the list of species dead at the hands of your own just on this planet. Ask every native life form on the planet Cimbrian. Deathworlders equal death. He stabbed a finger at her 3 times to punctuate each word. Then why are you helping us? She retorted. I was captured. My interrogation was gentle, Six told her. My guards and minders were polite and restrained. My interviewers were charming and sympathetic. The rules were laid out clearly and obviously, and were followed. No beatings, no torture, no verbal abuse, nothing more than the most necessary of indignities. When I cooperated, I was rewarded with privileges. When I resisted, the treats I had earned were taken away. It was methodical, thorough, and completely civilized. It has made me trust you, a trust that has proven justified several times since. So, even if we destroy you, our next inevitable containment failure might release a species not remotely so civilized and trustworthy, Six told her. That restraint is the only thing I have which resembles a guarantee for the long-term survival of the Agrayans. I regret having to cut loose every other species in the galaxy, but that is the way it must be. The time of the Deathworlders has come. Cut loose? Is it really that bad? Ash asked. Six laughed, composed a scenario in his head, and detailed it. Imagine, you are a thriving, proud civilization. Gleaming cities, global communications technology, art and culture and sports, and thriving economy. And one day, your oh-so-clever scientists discover the means by which a ship might have an apparent linear velocity greater than the speed of causality. You launch your first warship, the Pandora, and bask in your own accomplishments, until the aliens arrive. These aliens are monsters, true monsters, far worse than any fanged, acid-blooded animal your cinema industry ever devised. And they are monsters because what greets you, smiling politely and eager to make your acquaintance, are your superiors. Faster, tougher, stronger, more cunning, more inventive, more intuitive and more logical. Their art and music redefines everything you thought culturally possible. Their philosophy explores fields of thought which you had never even considered. They are all but impervious to your weapons. Their very breath carries plagues that could eviscerate your population. And their military doctrine operates several levels above your own. In every conceivable way, they are better than you. And you will never, ever become their equal in even one capacity, let alone in all regards. He sighed. More galling still is that they are even your ethical superiors. They do not gloat or exploit their superiority. They do not enslave you, but instead welcome you as the equals you are not. They give you a place at their table that you do not deserve. Listen to your pathetic attempts at having opinions and treat them with a seriousness they do not warrant. Every time they smile at you and treat you as their friend, they demonstrate yet again just how hopelessly inadequate you really are. And the very, very worst part of all will be that they are completely sincere. Ash frowned and looked down, thinking. Do you think humanity would survive a culture shock like that? Six asked. She didn't reply, and he nodded, satisfied. That, he told her, is what the future looks like now. Darcy. Wow. Either Six is deeply insecure, or his whole species is. Darcy nodded. The conversation was providing illuminating insights into both Six and Ava Rios. The former was the much more studied subject, of course, but if the monologue they were hearing was anything to go by, he'd been in a decidedly subdued mood throughout his prior detainment. Ava was feigning impatience, but also letting him rant, thereby drawing out all kinds of useful psychological information. For a young and untrained civilian, she was doing a damn decent job. Appealing to his ego was always the most effective technique during his interrogation, Darcy pointed out. A big ego that we punctured, or a big ego to cover for deeper insecurities? Why not both? The question is whether he's typical of Agrayans. We have a sample size of one guy. That's not enough to draw any solid conclusions. I don't know. His rationalizations for genocide sounded dogmatic to me. A rote response? The hierarchy party line? He hasn't abandoned his species entirely. It stands to reason that he's still mostly drinking the Kool-Aid. Assuming that he's not lying so we hear what he thinks we want to hear. If so, he's become a much better liar over the last 6 years. I don't think he's lying. Agreed, but if he's not, then his claim that, what did he say? After this conversation is over, I will already have everything I can usefully extract from you, no matter what you say? That bothers me. Mind games? I don't think so. I think his ego's at play again. I think he's hinting at something he's done, or is doing, or will do, that he believes won't be figured out, or at least not soon enough to make a difference. Superiority behavior. Darcy grimaced. The problem is, she observed, that he's probably right. 6. Ash, it seemed, had finally heard enough. "What do you need us to do?" she asked. "I have converted a cabal of my fellows who agree with my reasoning. If the hierarchy endures, it will lead inevitably to the death of the Agrayan people. They will force that conflict, and they will lose," 6 replied. "We have a plan, but we lack certain critical information." "Such as?" "On the rare occasions when the hierarchy deem that a crisis has reached the point where the authority of the low numbers such as myself is insufficient, we compile a Gestalt intelligence identified as 1, he told her. 1 uses the combined perspective and intelligence of every Agrayan on the network to draw conclusions and to decide the collective will of our species. It is an entity of formidable intelligence, but it is also inherently democratic rather than logical. Dissenting opinions are heard, but it is the majority opinion that matters. So, I intend to commit electoral fraud." "How?" "One may be a digital sapient, but speaking as a digital sapient, we are still vulnerable to being hacked. Indeed, I've done it myself. A fellow agent called Seven was the one who rescued me from my captivity, and his reward was that I hollowed him out and slithered into his mind, in much the same way as I did to this biodrone." She gave him a sickened look. "Why?" "Seven would have been my most competent adversary. His destruction was necessary. Instead, armed with his knowledge and authority, I have been able to build and protect the Cabal. One is, in theory, vulnerable to the exact same." "In theory," she repeated, voice dripping with sarcasm and contempt. "Better protected," 6 explained, letting the attitude slide. "But there is still no such thing as a secure system. One is hardened, supremely so, but it is still attackable, penetrable, and compromisable." "So why do you need humans?" Ash asked, clearly getting tired of repeating herself. "Because the important part of one's protection is that no member of the hierarchy knows where its physical layer is," 6 explained. "And doing what we intend to do will require us to access the physical medium that stores the seed algorithms from which it is compiled, and effect alterations." Ash's lips parted in blatant incredulity. "How in the... Do you have any idea where it is?" "Somewhere in this galaxy." She stared at him some more, then shook her head. "Now, I'm not going to give you another shot at that," she said. "Try giving me a useful answer this time." "That is the only answer I have. Somewhere in this galaxy." "Weren't you lecturing me on physics a while back?" she asked. "You've got to know how big the galaxy is." "Rather more clearly than you do, I suspect," 6 agreed. "Fortunately, while I don't know where the systems that house one itself are, I do know the coordinates of a routing station in the Erusian Reef. I believe human astronomy refers to the volume as the Sagittarius star cloud, or Messiah 24. He produced a slightly old-fashioned USB drive from his pocket with a flourish and offered it to her. "Galactic volume, star, planet, and coordinates on said planet. It's a Class 11, one of our historical cases. Heavier surface gravity than Earth, and the atmosphere is warmer, denser, moister, and richer in oxygen." "You mean you killed the people who used to live there?" Ash accused. "Yes. My first such in a supervisory role. They called themselves the Myorts. Unpleasant creatures. Deeply tribal, very warlike, fond of slavery. Their coming-of-age ritual involved a one-on-one fight to the death, and if the winner was too badly injured, they were promptly sacrificed. You should have seen their greedy little eyes light up, all 5 of them, when they learned how to split the atom. By the time the last bomb fell, we barely even needed to send in the abrogators." He smiled at her shocked expression. "I'm sorry, did you imagine that all Deathworlders are pleasant and civilized? Some of the things we've killed needed killing, or they would have been a worse plague than the Hunters. There's a reason I'm pinning my hopes on humanity. When I listed all those species humans have wiped out, you seemed uncomfortable. The Myorts would have laughed and bragged about it." Ash took the drive, still giving him a wary look. "And this routing station will lead us to one?" she said. "More likely it will lead you to another routing station. And that routing station may well lead you to another routing station. It is a vast network. But there can only be a finite number of steps to the hub. And how will we contact you to organize all of this? Ash asked. Oh, don't worry, Six told her. I've already made all the arrangements. Roy Vinther. Hey, barkeep? Yeah? Walsh looked up from his tablet. His expression was grim. The drone's tracking a convoy coming in. 6. What the hell do you mean you've made arrangements? Like what? Nope. My turn to ask the question, 6 denied her. But you don't need to know. In fact, it's much better if you don't, he told her truthfully. My turn. Tell me the link. Tell me the relationship between events that led you here. Ash hesitated and 6 gritted his teeth. In truth, he'd gotten everything he needed, but it would be torturously irritating to leave this particular itch unscratched. The link is a woman named Terry Boone, Ash revealed eventually. I know of her. A relative? My adopted father investigated her death. A cascade of data points connected themselves, and 6 relaxed with a happy sigh. The laws of probability and causality were vindicated. The chain of events, as he could see it now, was tangled, yes, but no less probable than any other sequence involving the lives of dozens of people. Then that would make you... His expression hardened, and he decided that it would be more fun to leave her guessing. Thank you for your honest answer, Ash. She stood. Are we done here? Priority 1, perimeter alert. B expected equals false. Re individual of interest equals insufficient data. 6 hesitated, then nodded. You know, I believe we are. She gave him a murderously cold glare and pushed past him. She opened the door in the surprised face of Barkeep, who had been about to knock. The two blinked at each other. You done? He asked. We're done. Good, 'cause we got incoming. He raised a small device, and Ash presented her cranium to him. Some kind of ultrasonic scanner, if 6 was any judge. It produced a happy ping and a green light, and Barkeep issued a satisfied grunt. Incoming? She asked, looking past him to stare warily at the ribbon of light coming off the highway and up the access road. Barkeep took the opportunity to conspiratorially whisper a question to her. 6 turned up the gain on his auditory cybernetics and listened in. You okay? He asked. Just talking to that creepy fuck gave me a headache, she murmured back. But I'm fine, thanks. Barkeep turned to 6. They with you? 6 shook his head. They are not. I suspect the hierarchy has found us. He stepped back into the office, produced a revolver and several speed loaders from his desk drawer. If I were you, I would call in whatever reinforcements you have. Owen Powell. Stainless, drinking, buddy. We got a probable big hotel rolling up on us. Ashes in hand with vital data. Overland egress is not plausible. Requesting support, over. Powell spat a curse. For a few bright and hopeful moments there, he started to entertain the idea that he might make it through this whole thing without anything going wrong. He waved a hand furiously to grab Thorpe's attention. Copy, DB. We're almost ready. ETA. He glanced at Thorpe, who held up 3 fingers. 3 minutes. The suits were just beginning to settle on the men, and they needed to be fully seated before they deployed. The loadmaster, overhearing the conversation on the party line, shook his head and flashed both his hands twice. Scratch. Aircrew thinks up to 20. Another gesture informed him of the reason. We need to recircle our orbit to get into position. Fuck. The wait on the line was a grim one. When Walsh replied, he sounded like a man who'd just been swearing violently. Understood. Stainless out. Powell sprang to his feet and shook the deck as he approached the loadmaster with a purpose. Loadmasters were a hardy breed who regularly dealt with the angriest and most violently inclined army personnel on drops and exercises, but this one still flinched ever so slightly. Even his career had probably not prepared the man for well over 300 pounds of angry, desperate astronaut with more combat training and experience than the most hardcore operators and an academic education to match, and more than 100 pounds of suit and the weight of combat gear beyond that. Given that Powell fancied the pilots were probably feeling the plane wobble just a little with every heavy EV mass footfall, he could hardly blame him. Staff Sergeant, we very much need to get there faster. Powell explained, keeping his voice level but urgent. The Loadmaster nodded and briefly conversed with the aircrew. Are your men ready, Major? We're flying easy and level for your tech's benefit. A quick glance showed that they were, and the techs were already packing it in. SOR, sounds like we're in for a rough ride. Get everything secured. He turned back to the Loadmaster. We will be shortly. Yes, sir, let me know, he grinned lightly. The pilots are going to love this. There was a squeal of metal on metal from down the bay. Warhorse had put his back into shoving one of the suit stations back into its transport pallet. Baseball was bracing himself to do the same. The Loadmaster cringed visibly, and doubly so when the second and third stations were stowed with similar physical efficiency that undoubtedly did serious damage to the load handling system and floor paneling. His crew chief would murder him when they got back. Powell could hardly blame the man for the way he put a hand on the top of his head and stared forlornly at the damage. Fuck. I'm gonna need to buy beers for the whole goddamn MXS. Powell clapped him sympathetically on the shoulders. Tell him to take it up with me, lad. We're in a bit of a hurry, as you can see. We'll be ready momentarily. Loadmaster swallowed and nodded. Yes, sir, he said, taking refuge in deflated stoicism. The techs knew the business of stowing their stations, and the words were barely out of the Loadmaster's mouth before the equipment was all crated, strapped, and locked down. The Globemaster could have performed a barrel roll, and they would have stayed comfortably in place. Thorpe aimed a thumbs up at Powell, and he threw himself into his seat and strapped in, his work finished for now. Loadmaster took his cue. Get seated and strap in. We'll be starting decom, too. He headed to his workstation, forward in the cargo bay and starboard near his drop management station, while the other two aircrews set up stations near the rear of the aircraft. Powell nodded, tugged his suit's air mask off the Velcro on his leg, and clipped it securely in place. High altitude as this jump was, there was no need to do a full vacuum-safe seal check, and accepted Warhorse's help and shrugged on his mission gear before installing himself in one of the chairs, waiting for the go signal. Once everyone was seated and the aircrew did a final check to ensure everything was in fact secure, the pilot was notified. The flight got interesting. Roy Vinther. Motherfucking shit-ass son of a fucking... Fuck! Walsh aimed his head at the sky, took a deep breath to compose himself, then keyed his mic. Understood, Stainless. Out. Coombs broke the silence. Bad news? He asked. 20 minutes. Walsh grabbed his binoculars. They're going to be here in 5, he estimated, aiming down the road. Vinther took them off him. Why is it always white fucking Toyota Hiluxes? He mused to himself, trying to guesstimate at a head count of their approaching enemy. Even his most optimistic lower boundary was an unhappily large number. Firth and Murray approached. Plan? Hunker down and wait for the cavalry. That's us up front, then, Murray nodded to Firth, who'd produced the single most predatory grin Vinther had ever seen. Yup. From under his terrible Hawaiian shirt, Firth produced a K-bar of obviously custom and superior make. Guess I'll be the distraction, then. He reached down and made sure his boots were properly done up. Good thing I didn't wear my sandals. Vinther raised his eyebrow at the sandals comment, but nodded his approval, and turned to the others. Pavlo, Coombs, we're over there. He indicated the cover offered by the heavy mining equipment, where the three of them would have excellent fields of fire as the arriving trucks pulled into the open space. Walsh, you see those rocks up there? He indicated a spot on the hillside above the foreman's office, with a good vantage point down the village's two main roads. You live there now. You, he turned to Ava, stick the fuck right by me and keep your head down. The first thing they'd done upon seeing the approaching pickups was to shove Rios into her armor. She was trembling but alert and nodded emphatically. All right, clear the trucks out and then block the access road with them. We've got 4 minutes. Move. 6 M4 carbines, plenty of ammo for them, a Mark 20 for Walsh, grenades, and all the equipment they'd brought with them was easily unloaded and hustled to the safety of their defensive positions. Walsh put his muscles to use and took all his gear up the hill in one go, and the 2 SOR men drove the 2 SUVs into position, then actually lifted them to swing their back ends around and create a firmly immobile roadblock. The efficient bustle ended with a minute to spare. Vinther was knelt behind the monolithic mechanism rock-crushing machinery, which was probably solid enough to deflect anything the hostiles might have, short of a tank. He laid everything out, checked that Ava was in place, and decided that it couldn't hurt to armor. She took the gun as if it were made of uranium, but managed to mumble an acknowledgement and thanks. That was as safe as she was ever going to get. Firth, Murray, Pavlo, Coombs, and Walsh were all in position, and if Vinther was any judge, Firth was taking a moment to pray, head bowed and a hand to Murray's back. Vinther looked upwards. "Hey, Lord, if you don't see fit to see me through this, please forgive me all the wrong I've done," he prayed, "and all the wrong I'm about to do. Amen." He heard Ava whisper an echoing amen, and the first truck came around the corner. Owen Powell. With actively moving cargo, the flight crew had kept the G-forces under control, pointing straight down into the decking and a constant wait so as not to injure anyone walking about. The so-called bus driver mode of operations. Now that the cargo was locked down, the pilots were free to unleash the frustrated part of their soul that had wanted to fly fighters. For all that the C-17 had a not undeserved reputation as a boring cargo plane, it was also a plane built for performance. Now, instead of doing a wide, sweeping, gently rolling turn at cruising speed, the pilot could do a combat drop. This involved a rapid series of hairpin turns combined with steep dives to recover kinetic energy. Seen from outside, such a maneuver was deeply alarming. From inside, it was a sideways roller coaster. What would have been a 10-minute slow circle was shaved down to less than a minute. They still weren't going to be able to jump for longer than Powell would have liked. Lining up on a drop required finesse and for the plane to be traveling at a safely low airspeed. Then there was the need to decompress so that nobody on board got the bends, and the time involved in falling to Earth, which, from their current altitude, would take a minute or two. Still, they'd shaved 5 minutes off their ETA. Those 5 minutes might make all the difference. Powell glanced at the loadmaster, who'd raised a thumb for him, flashed both his hands once, and then offered 3 fingers. Decompression was already well underway. Powell could see the pressure and temperature both plummeting in his HUD, but he wondered about making a recommendation through Admiral Knight to see if Boeing might be persuaded to develop a new C-17 with force fields and super batteries. Armed with those, the crew inside might have stayed warm and comfortable while the SOR in their spacesuits stepped through a pressure-retaining field. It would have saved the poor techs from fidgeting and shivering at least. "Drinking, buddy?" he said. "Stainless. Revised ETA is 13. That's 13 minutes over." Walsh's voice came back tense and focused against a backdrop of gunfire. All he said was, "Copy, Stainless." Anthony Pavlopoulos. The moment that Firth and Murray struck was so sudden and so violent that Pavlo almost forgot to fire his weapon. The convoy was undeniably hostile. Every human body, male and female, sitting in it was armed and had the characteristic blank expression of a biodrone that wasn't actively pretending to be a person right now. In fact, Pablo could swear they recognized one of the passengers in the lead truck from the gunfight in Cairo. This much had been established before it stopped at the impromptu roadblock. The drones in the back of the lead Hilux began to efficiently and in eerie unison gather themselves to disembark and clear the obstacle. But Firth was faster. He vaulted the roadblock, sprang across the gap, and landed with both booted feet on the hood of the stopped pickup. There was a horrible crunch of metal, and the car sagged as if its front axle had been damaged. The impact rocked the drones in the back so badly that they had to take a moment to recover their balance, and in that moment Firth was down off the hood and had wrenched the driver's side door off the car and dispatched the driver and shotgun passenger so quickly that Pablo couldn't even clearly see what he'd done. By the time he'd processed the encounter, Firth was already clear of the engagement zone and barreling towards the next truck, jinking with every step. The drones in the back of the first truck made to pile out and attack him, only for Walsh to put a round straight in the first one's center of mass. And when Vinther, Pavlo, and Coombs raked the Toyota's flank with an accurate volley, the drones clearly decided that they needed to get out on the other side. This was a mistake. Murray was waiting for them. Pablo couldn't see exactly what their softly spoken Scotsman did, but to judge from the calm way he popped up after a few seconds to drop an incendiary grenade into the truck's flatbed and then faded from view, it had been effective. The grenade went off, and the truck was a fireball in seconds, definitively blocking the road in a way that the two parked SUVs hadn't. Even biodrones probably weren't going to try and shove a steel inferno out of the way. The second truck didn't go nearly as well as the first. What biodrones lacked in free will, they made up for in communication, responding almost like a single organism. By the time Firth barreled into the second truck's worth, the full queue beyond them was vaulting down to the ground. Freed from constraints such as giving a fuck about their comrades' lives, they rapid-fired into the melee. Firth retreated into the limited cover offered by the second truck, holding up a jerking biodrone corpse as a bullet catcher. Walsh fired again, scoring his second kill, and the biodrone army spread out and went to the ground. This suited Pavlo just fine. The Delta team laid down waves of fire into the cover the drones were using, buying Firth the opening he needed to slip away and blur across a short stretch of open ground, throwing a frag grenade as he went. Part of the rocky patch where a tough knot of drones had taken root became a rain of dust and flesh. Over the open line, he heard Walsh acknowledging an update from Major Powell, which he passed along. "Paras, ETA 13 minutes," before taking another shot. Pavlo grinned, aimed, and drilled a biodrone with a 3-round burst as it crawled up out of its impromptu foxhole and took careful aim in Firth's direction. By some miracle, things were actually going well. Something made a hideous shrieking sound that seemed to fill the whole sky. Whatever it was that gave the SOR their strength also gave them reflexes to match, it seemed, as both Firth and Murray dived in opposite directions away from the truck they'd been using for cover an instant before something crashed down into that truck hard enough to smash it flat into the ground, pulverizing the road for good measure. The smoke from the burning lead pickup billowed, flattened, and burst open exactly as if something had blown through it and the bottom dropped out of Pavlo's stomach. He snap-fired to keep the biodrones' heads down and got on the comms. "Barkeep, it's that fucking UFO. We gotta..." The alien ship fired a second time, and the only saving grace for Sergeant First Class Anthony Pavlopoulos was that he never felt the blast that destroyed him. Owen Powell. "Man down. Hangover is KIA." Murray had always been soft-spoken and economical with his words, but anybody who knew him understood that he was never terse. The fact that his voice was now level and cold as a frozen lake meant that the situation had just gone from serious to dire. The live feed from Walsh's UAV meant that Powell didn't need a sitrep. He plainly saw the way the bulldozer sheltering Coombs lurched a meter sideways as the third pulse cannon shot shattered its flank. Coombs himself only narrowly escaped being pulped. "Barkeep, stainless," he ordered. "Pull back into the village. You need overhead concealment." "Copy, Stainless." "Drinking, buddy. Can you get a fix on that UFO?" "Stainless, DB. Working on it, sir. It's cloaked." "DB, paradrop cannot go ahead while Big Hotel have air superiority." "Stainless, UFO is producing 0 emissions and it's transparent to all sensors." "Surf the damn thing and tape an IR flare to it if you have to. Support is not available until that UFO has been splashed," Powell repeated. "Understood, Stainless." Movement in his peripheral vision drew Powell's attention to Baseball putting a comforting hand on Warhorse's shoulder. Aries, for his part, was completely still. His fingers weren't even fidgeting nervously. Aside from the mechanical rise and fall of his chest and the occasional jolt as the C-17 fine-tuned their approach, he wasn't moving at all. Wishing he could say it aloud, Powell willed the young man to hold it together, and willed Walsh to find a way. There was nothing worse than being helpless. Roy Vinther. The 4th and 5th pulse cannon shots hammered the rock-crushing machine with such force that a few hundred tons of metal actually shifted on its treads. Both Vinther and Ava flinched away from it, though neither of them dared to stray too far without exposing themselves. Retreating into the village was a good order. It was one Vinther would have loved to have followed immediately. The problem was that it would have involved a dash of nearly 50 meters of open ground in full view of the UFO and the biodrones, a prospect made even less appealing than it already had been when a 6th shot wrecked the conveyor belt, which collapsed with a wail of tearing metal. Ava made a terrified noise. She was curled up in a ball with her arms over her head and hyperventilating, and there was absolutely nothing Vinther could do for her as the rock crusher took another hit and rocked alarmingly. Gunfire erupted at the far end of the loading area, and the bombardment ceased. Vinther gritted his teeth and poked his head out for cover, expecting at any second to be reduced to a puddle of blood and liquefied tissues at the bottom of a crater like poor Pavlo. An army of biodrones had emerged from a village to engage the hierarchy drones. Armed with numerical advantage and complete disregard for their safety, they caught the advancing hierarchy units in enfilade and swung the battle into the opposing Fulisad. The UFO's engines screamed as it turned in the rising column of dust it had kicked up and turned its cannon on the advancing Cabal troops. Each shot blasted through them like a wrecking ball, crushing and bursting them as if they were water balloons. But, by God, it was an opening. "Up! Run!" he yelled, grabbed Ava by the back of her armor and hauled her behind him. She took a few steps to find her footing, but put her head down and sprinted alongside him. They made their first 30 meters unnoticed and unopposed. With 20 meters to go, the hierarchy drones shifted their focus from the Cabal opposite numbers and opened fire in their direction. Behind him, Vinther heard Coombs curse and stumble as a lucky shot winged him. Ava yelped and nearly tripped as another round struck her square in the back, but her armor's sappy plate held and she kept her footing and ran. 10 meters to go, and the biodrones were forced to put their heads down as Murray appeared in an upper-story window and sprayed them with suppressing fire. There was nothing he could do about the UFO, though, which howled as it banked back across the open space and lined up directly behind the runners. Vinther gave Ava a solid shove in the arm, pushing her towards a gap between two houses. She stumbled, fell, and rolled safely into the concealment offered by the alleyway. Vinther jinked right. The pavement to his left cracked as another of those impossibly powerful pulse shots slammed into it. He angled towards the next gap that offered itself. There were only 3 steps to go before he was Ava Rios. A pulse cannon round scythed down the street, blowing out the corner of a house and obliterating Vinther in mid-stride. The building, a cheap construction made from concrete blocks and wooden beams, promptly collapsed and buried the horrific slurry of crushed meat and shattered bone that was all that was left of him. Concrete dust filled the air. The UFO's high-pitched roar tracked futilely up and down the street as it presumably tried to scan through the dense cloud of dust and failed, before it gave up and backed off towards the other end of the town to assist in the gunfight between the biodrones. Ava was too busy shivering and trying not to throw up to really pay attention, but she did pay attention when panting. Footfalls and swearing heralded the arrival of Coombs, who stumbled into her alleyway and seemed to nearly collapse with relief upon seeing her. "Christ! Jesus! Fuck!" he suggested eloquently. Ava could only nod. She wasn't sure she could remember how to speak at that moment. Coombs shook his head and raised a bloody hand to his communicator. "Drinking, buddy? Bouncer. Barkeep is KIA. I'm wounded. Ash is..." He glanced at Ava, who managed to give him a shaky thumbs up. "A-OK. We have cover and concealment near Port Charlie." Walsh's reply was quiet. Unlike the rest of them, running from his position hadn't been an option, and the best Walsh could do was stay down, stay camouflaged, and watch. "Bouncer, we need to light that UFO up right now, because the cavalry isn't coming till it's gone. Only thing I could think of would be hitting it with firebomb or something." Coombs tried to haul himself upright, grimaced, and collapsed. Ava realized that his breathing sounded strange, like he was short on breath or something. "Lightweight and Guinness, you hear that?" All they heard from Murray was a clipped, "Copy." "Lightweight, come back." There was a too long pause, then a terse, "Copy, be right there," in Firth's angriest tones. Coombs nodded. "Okay, Ava, I'm going to need your help with this. Just do what I tell you, okay?" Ava nodded, and he handed her a plastic syringe applicator covered in simple diagrams to demonstrate its proper use. "I've got a wound down here," Coombs said, leaning forward with a pained groan and lifting his shirt. Ava's stomach lurched. That was a lot of blood, and it was bubbling. "Hold it together," he snapped. "Now," he coughed. "Step 1, I need you to find the entry wound. It's below my shoulder blade on the back. This is going to hurt like a motherfucker, but I need you to shove that applicator right in there and empty it. To hell with how I respond, okay?" Okay. It was a relief to say anything, even if it was just the same word over and over again. But finding her voice at least gave Ava the impetus she needed to do what she was told. She shifted around and found the wound site. Some detached, chilly part of her noted that under normal circumstances she would have balked at getting blood on her, but right now that didn't seem like an important issue. "Ram it in there real good," Coombs ordered, bracing himself. Ava swallowed hard and obeyed. An off-white foam boiled out of the applicator's nozzle and neatly filled the wound, solidifying in seconds. Though it clearly hurt like hell, he bore it in silence. "Good," he managed. "Gauze and tape." He tapped at the open medical kit beside him. Ava piled into it, found the requested items, thank God for clear labeling, and did her best to affix them securely. He bore her clumsy medicing stoically and handed her a square pack of some kind the moment she was done. "Put that over the exit wound." His breathing was definitely getting more difficult. "It'll stick down just fine through the blood, but you gotta stick it down good. You got that?" "Got it." The most difficult part by far was opening the packaging, with blood making her fingers slick and sticky. The circular patch inside was transparent and clearly labeled, and sticking it on really was as easy as following orders and trying to ignore the way he squirmed and clearly wanted to scream as she pressed firmly on his wound. He waved her off. Okay. Whew. There was a nasty blowing noise coming from the patch she'd stuck to his ribs, but Coombs seemed to start feeling better within only a half-dozen breaths or so. By the time he'd taken a half-dozen more, he was almost breathing normally. "Hey, I've had worse medics," he joked weakly. "You did good." "Please don't get shot a second time," Ava requested. She was feeling a lot better herself. Grim as it had been, having anything to do, was a world better than curling into a ball and praying. Coombs chuckled, even though it plainly hurt. "Ow." "Okay, last step I need is to be in the recovery position. Help me tip over that way." He waved his right arm. That part was much easier, and Coombs was getting his limbs settled into the right position when Ava caught a glimpse of movement across the street. Firth glanced up and down and darted across the open space faster than a maniac cat. "Biodrones are warring," he reported. "How bad are you?" "Dr. Rios here did a pretty good job," Coombs replied. Firth gave Ava a skeptical look, which turned into grudging respect when he saw the blood on her hands. "You hurt?" "I'm fine," Ava told him. "My armor stopped a hit." "Good, because if you die, Warhorse is going to kill me," Firth grunted. He turned and checked up the street again. The sleeve of his shirt was soaked red. "Firth, you're wounded," Ava pointed out. He glanced at it. "Ain't nothing. Look, Coombs, we got a serious problem. Ain't no gasoline in this village. It's all diesel." "So Walsh's firebomb idea's a non-starter," Coombs observed. He shivered. "Ava, there's a foil blanket in the kit. I'm going to need it." Glad for something to do, Ava dug into the kit looking for it. "Not unless Haji started drinking whiskey," Firth grunted. "No, I think I'm going to have to do something really dumb." Staff Sergeant Timothy Walsh. The one nice thing about living in the space future was that nobody had turned out to have stupid bullshittatron sensors that could detect life signs through walls or anything like that. The EM spectrum was the EM spectrum for everybody, and that fact was the only reason that Walsh was still alive. Mylar reflected infrared just fine, and whatever sensors the UFO had, they weren't space-age magic fuck-you sensors that could spot Walsh underneath his camo blanket. Or, at least, they hadn't yet. Still, if the biodrones below figured out where he was, he probably wouldn't know it. He'd just become another bloody crater in the ground, identical to Pablo's. That meant not moving. Never mind the sharp itch in his right boot. Never mind the stone pressing into his knee. Never mind any of that. Motion, or at least anything more than the most glacially restrained motion, would mean instant death. Even answering his comm had to be done slowly and quietly. "Drinking buddy lightweight. Please tell me your Angel's got an AIM-9X on it." Walsh resisted the urge to sag. That meant the firebomb option was a no-can-do. Firth knew what he was asking. The F-22 did indeed have an AIM-9X, which would have locked onto the UFO just fine by tracking the friction of its movement through the air, if the fucking thing would just remain in motion. Unfortunately, the alien ship just flitted from standstill to standstill, never in motion long enough to secure a good target lock. "Lightweight, it does, but the UFO keeps standing still, no lock." "Timing on the strike if you could get a lock?" 6 seconds, Walsh replied promptly. That number had remained at the forefront of his mind ever since the UFO had first showed up. He knew more or less where it was. It was dancing around the west end of town, systematically flattening buildings to crush the Cabal biodrones that had entrenched within them. Unfortunately, that knowledge didn't translate to a viable target. Any way we can bring that down to below 4? Not without the UFO maybe seeing it. Our Angel's going to have the kinetic energy, but that fucking spaceship's got the acceleration and tech edge. The hell are you thinking anyways? Thunder Run. It would work. That part was immediately obvious. If they timed it properly, then all they had to do was launch the missile and force the UFO to move. There was just one small flaw in the plan. That's suicide. Maybe. I'm pretty quick. No other options, Murray chimed in. The Cabal drones are being overrun. Walsh had to agree. All right, we've got 5 minutes until the paras can drop, he said. I'll set it up. Lightweight, you get ready. Just so we're clear, I get to fuck your sister after this, right? Walsh suppressed a fatal urge to laugh. You'd need to do a lot more than this. Get in position. Ava Rios. Coombs fidgeted slightly. Hey, Ava. His voice was a welcome break from her worries and the distant sound of gunfire and collapsing buildings. Yeah? Whatever you do, don't let me fall asleep, okay? Firth was gone, having set off on a run after his vulgar parting shot to Walsh. Ava had only overheard his half of the conversation, and she didn't know what a thunder run was, or any of the rest of it, but she could guess. And as antagonistic as her relationship with the SR had become, she didn't want any harm to come to him. You feeling sleepy? Adrenaline's worn off. Shock might set in. Medevac's not going to be here for a while, Coombs explained. Just warning you. I don't feel sleepy, but keep an eye on me. I don't want to die out here. Yeah, she almost laughed the word, feeling a surge of black humor. I can relate. Why'd you agree to this anyways, he asked, if you don't mind me asking. Six asked for me personally. Okay, so you don't want to answer, that's fine. No, I do. Ava shook her head. He didn't say anything, and she checked on him. He blinked and nodded at her, still awake. Look, I don't know. You've got a hole through you, and my baggage is all small stuff next to that. He chuckled again and winced. Doesn't hurt to offload it, and hell, I could do with a distraction. You ever felt completely useless? Like hiding behind a bulldozer while an alien ship shoots at you useless? Think I might know that one. Yeah. Ava saw the funny side and managed a dark little laugh. Something like that. Not like as immediate, but a lot like that. I hear you, Coombs nodded. Nothing worse than feeling useless. Well, yeah, men are lucky there. She waved a hand at him. You get to be special forces and do stuff like this. Never thought of getting shot at as a privilege before, he deadpanned, and wriggled slightly to try and make himself a little more comfortable. Sorry. Relax, I know what you mean, he assured. We all want to make the world a better place. Fucking sucks that some ways just aren't open to women. Fucking biology. He said it with a half smile that made her laugh a little. It was good to be talking again. Yeah, I mean, I don't think I'd suit the military. What makes you say that? Come on, like, Firth didn't piss and moan about me? Coombs didn't comment, but when she glanced at him, he looked like he was thinking about something. What? She asked. Hey, we don't really know each other, he shifted uncomfortable. Not my place to say anything. Say it anyways. He cleared his throat, which apparently hurt. My ex-wife did what you did. I'm sorry. Nah, see? I forgave her. She's happily married now. The other fellow's a great guy. My daughter's lucky enough to have 2 daddies, and I remember the dude who made the most noise about her and had my back the loudest. He turned a blind eye to how his hound dog asshole best friend was cheating on his fiancée. So you're saying maybe don't worry about what the SOR think of me? I don't really know what I'm saying, Coombs admitted. I'm just saying whatever comes into my head. Have you ever told her any of that? Ava asked. Guess I haven't. You should. Take it from me. There was another rattle of gunfire across town, and Ava flinched as a bullet went past high overhead with a snap. What's this Thunder Run thing for us doing? She asked. Crazy asshole's gonna run out in the open and get the UFO to chase him, Coombs replied. If it keeps moving long enough, the raptor we've got out there somewhere can bitch slap it off the face of the earth, and then maybe we can get this shit sorted out. And if it doesn't work? Walsh might get out of here. He'd have to sit still for like a week and then crawl his ass out under the cover of darkness. Murray could probably do that fucking ninja thing of his, too. Maybe he could get you out with him, too. I don't know. And you? He shrugged. She was wondering what, if anything, to say in response to that when he shivered and gave her a welcome excuse to change the subject. You cold? Coombs smiled for her. Don't worry, it'll work. And there'll be 2 medics dropping out of the sky any minute now. Good. They're great guys. I reckon you've never seen them like this, though, Coombs suggested. What do you mean? From what I've seen of the SOR so far, great guys, yeah, but just brace yourself for maybe seeing a new side of them, he said. That's all. Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening. I am the Casual Deathworlder, your host, and this has been The Deathworlders, Chapter 26, Part 2. If you enjoyed this content, please remember, the algorithm demands sacrifice. And while you're at it, please smash those like and subscribe buttons and consider dropping a comment down below for engagement purposes. As always, a huge shout out to my editor, Graygor. Thank you very much, buddy. I couldn't do this without you. Okay, while this is not a huge chapter, it is too large a chapter to do in one take. It's like 81 pages. As such, it'll be released on YouTube and Rumble in 3 parts. It'll be available as one piece on Patreon for my Tier 4 subscribers in the next couple of weeks. If you would like to listen to it all as a single unit, please consider subscribing there. And lastly, I invite you to join our community over on Discord. The invite link is in the channel description at the top of the page in YouTube and Rumble. Come join our community and join in the fun there. Until next time, be safe, be well. I love you all. Wake up, Mr. Graygor. It is time to stop being dead. We have work to do. It is an entity of formidable